Hello everyone, welcome to today's session of the Refugee Solidarity Week event. We hope you've had an amazing week so far. Today we're going to have interviews with the lovely director of the Citizens of the World Choir, Becky Dell, and the medicine student, the dear Gayathri Thivyaa. We're also going to have some amazing performances from our volunteers and a surprise performance for you. So enjoy! Hello everyone, welcome to our talk of today. I'm here with Becky Dell. She's the director of the Citizens of the World Choir. Hi Becky.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good. What a lovely day it is today. I'm so happy to be talking with you today.
Oh, me too. So Becky, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Absolutely. So hi everyone, I'm Becky, the musical director of the Citizens of the World Choir. I've been a musician and human rights campaigner for a number of years, and 3 or 4 years ago, in response to the refugee crisis, Lord Roberts asked me if I would put the choir together. So here we are 3 years later, and what an adventure it's been.
Oh, I met Lord Roberts. He's an amazing man, so lovely.
Yes. Oh, you spoke to him and Mark last week, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, they're just a wonderful duo. And Lord Roberts, honestly, he's got the biggest, kindest heart out of anyone I've ever met. And it's been such a privilege working with him on this project and lots of human rights issues.
It's really lovely. And would you like to tell us a little bit more about the choir? Like, how was it founded? What was the main motivation to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2015, 2016, there was a group of volunteers that we'd gone out to the Calais camp, the jungle. We'd all sort of got to know each other out there. I was out there with some of my music friends, and we were teaching music lessons to the kids in a school over there. Some people were handing out clothes and blankets and food. And we had got involved with some action that was happening in Parliament called the Dubs Amendment, which was aiming to bring 3,000 vulnerable orphaned children across. And through that we got to know Lord Roberts, and then he said, will you put this choir together? So a group of us, and I think we're all still involved, which is amazing, a group of us put this fabulous choir together. We're called the Citizens of the World Choir, because Socrates famously said, I am not an Athenian from Athens, I am not a Greek, but I am a citizen of the world. And I think that's a philosophy that we all subscribe to. We're all children of the universe and citizens of the world and brothers and sisters together. So we now have 53 members in our choir, and we represent 28 different nationalities from around the world.
That's beautiful. And the question I'm asking now is maybe a little bit personal, but I would like to know if there are any beautiful memories that you've had. Like, what's your favorite one of them that you've had in the choir?
Very good question. Honestly, the choir is the best thing I've done in my life. Hands down, the best thing I've done in my life. It's been the hardest and the steepest learning curve, and it's just been the biggest lesson in politics, geography, history, culture, art, food, clothes, everything. They say that if the world is a book and you just stay in your country, you read one page. And I feel now like I understand 28 countries a bit better. And the best memories, I think, are the people. I've just got a grin on my face just thinking about it. So I now have an adopted mother from Kenya, a sister from Iran, and a brother from Pakistan. And the breadth of culture and knowledge and friendship we've all gained has been incredible, absolutely incredible. And we're such a multicultural community, and all of our lives are richer from all of the other different cultures that we've discovered and loved.
That's so beautiful, honestly. And I would like to ask, what is a favorite foreign song that you sang in the choir?
Favorite song?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's such a hard question. These are good questions. I would probably have to say it would be a toss-up between Sia Hamba and I Can't Keep Quiet. So Sia Hamba is a very cheerful, upbeat sort of African song, and it's become one of the pieces that we do all the time. We've sung it on the TV a couple of times. We often do it as an encore. It's a really happy number, and we get everyone up on their feet and clapping and joining in. And I love it when we get audience participation. I think if you go and see a choir, you don't just want to see a choir, you want to join in singing, because singing like makes you feel so good. So I love getting all of the audience singing with us. But there's also a song we did called I Can't Keep Quiet, and it was written for the Women's March in Washington a couple of years ago, and we teamed that up with a song that we've taken from Music in Detention, or fragments of song from Music in Detention, which is a charity that works with people in the UK. Music in Detention work with people in detention centres in the UK, which obviously we fight all the time. Detention is awful and inhumane, and we're always fighting to end indefinite detention in the UK. So we put these two songs together, and it's a really powerful song about finding and using your voice. And I think all of us can use our voice. We can make a change. We can call for equality and better situations. So yeah, I love using music to being a rallying cry to changing the world.
Definitely. Oh, that's so beautiful, honestly. And I think I've watched a couple of your videos, and I saw you sing, and I saw them singing Kurdish and Arabic. But honestly, it was so beautiful, like so many people together singing very, very different songs, but sounding so lovely in solidarity. Honestly, it's so beautiful.
Oh,
And have
thank
you had? I'm sure you have. Have you heard their stories? How did you feel? How did you feel hearing them?
You generally don't hear a whole story at a time. You hear a fragment. Because recounting your story of how you've ended up being a refugee, and that's such a label to put on someone. You are more than a refugee, you are more than your status, and yet you get put through this system, this experience, and it's very dehumanizing and it's very traumatic, and lots of people are without their families. So I think in my experience, people have tended to uncover their story bit by bit as they get to know you. And it's always really hard because, you love that person and you develop a relationship and a bond with them, and hearing what people have gone through is really hard. But we have to hear those stories because we have to make it right, and we want to be there to support them. And when there are injustices going on in the world, we need to speak up about it. So we need to, I think, we need to use our platform to say, this is happening and it's not right, and here's what we do about it.
Yeah. And what is something this choir has taught you, being in this choir?
It's just been the biggest life lesson. It's been the biggest life lesson. I was chatting to a friend last week. We were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and we're talking about different cultures and things like that. And I've just turned 40, and I was saying, working in, with refugees and human rights as I have done over the last 4 or 5 years, I feel like I've learned more in those 4 or 5 years than I have in my previous 35 years before that. So I think just you can't learn about life from a book or from reading an article. Like, you learn about life from people and listening to their experiences and understanding what they've gone through, both good and the bad. Just because someone is a refugee doesn't mean that everything in their life is bad, and we celebrate all the successes and the good things that happen in our life, because there are still good things. There are moments of joy and positivity. And so just experiencing more about life through people has been such a gift.
Wow. And I have a very beautiful question I'd like to say. So it is, what do you think music's role in peace building is?
In peace building? Yeah, really good question. These are really good questions. I like these questions that you're asking. So when things need to be changed, I think the tone that you get across in how you change things is really important. And if you say, this is wrong, it needs to be changed, and you tell people off, even if they're your government, it blocks the message being heard. If you can find an empathetic, fun, engageable way of getting that information across, people are much more likely to respond to it. But it's why comedy and humor works and is so important. And I think music has the power to say things without articulating it, without it being too preachy, but bringing out the humanity in a situation. And I think the more that we can connect to each other as human beings and as people on this planet, as citizens of the world, as citizens of this crazy rock that we're on rotating through space, the better. And music is a great platform for doing that.
Definitely. And this is the last question. It lasted so fast. So we have a band in Human Rights Solidarity, and it's called the Solidarity Band. And it's a very, very new band, just like HRS. So I would like to ask if there is some advice you would like to give our band.
Oh, amazing. Okay, how long have you been going for?
It's been a couple of months.
Okay, and what kind of music do you play?
I don't know. I'm not in the band.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's one of the first pieces of advice I would give you is this was some advice I was given by a very famous jazz musician's manager. And I was in a band at the time, and I was talking to him about the band, and he said, "What music do you play?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't really know. A bit worldy music, a bit dancey, a bit folky, a bit this, a bit that." And he was like, "You've got to have 3 words that describe your style. So are you thrash metal, punk, dance music, or are you world music, eclectic folk, or something?" So find 3 words that define what it is that you do. Work out why you're doing it. Do you want to do it because you're trying to say something, because you want the community, because you want to get out there and gig? Do you want to make money? No, it doesn't happen very often being a musician, let me tell you that, but you never know. And how are you going to go about doing it? So are you going to do real life gigs, in-person gigs? Might be hard at the moment. Or are you going to build up a following online? Who is your audience? Think about who you are taking this message to. Is it people your own age? Is it younger? Is it older? Is it different cultures? Is it everybody? So that's called your customer avatar. So like, what do they look like? So think about your customer avatar, think about why you're doing it, and think of an easy way to describe what it is that you do.
Great.
Yeah.
Can I also ask something? What does a refugee mean to you? The word refugee.
Yeah. I was having this conversation with someone else this morning as well. Of course, it's Refugee Week at the moment, and these things always make you think. A refugee to me is someone that has had something happen to them that wasn't of their choosing or doing, and they have had to respond to that. And of course, often it means leaving behind the things that you love, the people that you love, the communities that you love, and starting again. But I think the word refugee obviously has a lot of sadness attached to that word. And I think that doesn't accurately tell a whole story about a person. And certainly the members that we've worked with now for 3 years, who they are now after 3 years is very different from who they were when they first arrived in this country. So I think the word refugee needs to evolve as the people evolve.
Thank you very much, honestly. It was so beautiful. It was so lovely to talk with you. I loved it.
Thank you so much. Well, listen, we're doing an open rehearsal this Wednesday the 17th as part of Refugee Week for our fabulous choir, and I would like to extend an invitation to all of you, not only for this week, but whenever you would like to come and sing with us. We're always looking for new members. Like I say, we've got 28 countries represented. We are always after countries 29, 30, 31, 32, etc. So we want to always expand our community. So no singing experience is needed. We're such a friendly, open-hearted place. We do lots of fabulous gigs, lots of fabulous music. Like you said, we sing music from all over the world. We sing, I think last season we sang Farsi and Welsh and English and African. We just sing everything. Zulu, I think that we were singing. So we would like to extend an invitation to you this Wednesday, 7 till 8:15. The details are on our Facebook page. Open rehearsal, and you can just see what it is that we do. But then generally every Wednesday night we rehearse. So we would love you guys to come along and be part of the choir if you would like to try it.
You make me want to join the choir, Becky.
Yeah, do it. We have so much fun.
I honestly might.
Please do. That would be awesome.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much, Becky.
my
Have a
absolute
lovely
pleasure.
day, everyone.
Good luck with what you're doing. Good luck with this project. I love it when people come together, build communities, take control, make positive change. So just keep going, keep being awesome. You guys are
Thanks.
brilliant.
Thanks to Becky for her lovely talk. We now have an amazing art performance from our volunteers. Enjoy. Thanks to our volunteers for such an amazing art performance. We now have another talk with Gayathri, Thivyaa. Enjoy.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another talk that touches on topics related to refugees in celebration of Refugee Week 2020. Today I am joined by a special guest. Hi Thivyaa.
Hello, thank you so much for interviewing me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. First, could you please tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Gayathri Gayathri. I'm a second year medical student at Imperial, and I am Tamil.
Great. So I know that you're involved in lots of work and projects to do with refugees. I want to know what made you care about these issues?
Yeah, I guess the topic of refugees is a very personal one to me, because my parents are refugees from Sri Lanka. So I suppose growing up, I've sort of seen the first-hand effects that the war has had on my parents and their family. And it's been, not just on their health, but also things like their education, which has impacted their access to jobs, their ability to trust people, their friendships, their family, their relationships. And I suppose as I've gotten older as well, I've started to realise the impact that it's had on me growing up. And I feel like the impact of trauma on subsequent generations is completely overlooked. It's just not really talked about. And so when it comes to talking about refugees, I feel like the health side of things is just swept under the carpet, and then politically that takes the spotlight. So I think all these kinds of things have made me feel like I want to do more. I want to talk about these struggles more, and I'd like to use my knowledge, I suppose, as a medic to better understand how I can help refugees, and I suppose increase the awareness a bit more as well. And I guess at the end of the day, the fact that Tamil refugees haven't been granted justice, I think will always play a role in there somewhere. So yeah, those I guess are the reasons why.
Could you tell us a bit more about the Tamil refugee struggle, please?
Yeah, that's such a tricky question. I feel like we could talk about it for days and days.
Because I feel like they're not really given, like, I mean, not many people know about it, and
Yeah,
it's important to talk about issues of people who don't have a platform. So
yes,
I'd really like to
absolutely.
know more about that myself as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking, firstly. So I think the reason why lots of people don't really know much about the Tamil refugee struggle is because when the war was really at its peak, I think 10 to 20 years ago, and the refugees started coming over, no one was really talking about refugees, and social media wasn't really a thing. So the kind of discussions that we have these days around the refugee struggle, it wasn't really happening then. I guess what happened was that in Sri Lanka there are two languages, and there's the Tamil language and the Sinhalese language. And after colonialism, after the British left, my understanding of it is that the government was predominantly made of Sinhalese individuals who I suppose didn't really like Tamils very much, and decided that they were going to get rid of the Tamils and essentially ethnically cleanse the country of them, which meant that besides the very obvious horrific things like bombings and massacres and violence in the form of rape and torture, there were also things like institutionalized racism and discrimination, like for example, my mum, she couldn't go to university because in her district, which was a Tamil district, the entry requirements to get into university was a lot higher than if you lived in an area where there weren't very many Tamils and there were more Sinhalese people. And so these kinds of things, they happened. And at the time, when the Tamils tried to rise up against it, they were named as terrorists by the Sri Lankan government. And I suppose the rest of the world believed what the government was saying because the government was in power. And the UN people who are working there, the volunteers who are working there, they were told to go back home because the area was unsafe for them. And instead, what the government did was that it told the Tamils as well that there would be a particular area where they wouldn't fight, they wouldn't bomb. And this area included hospitals, and it was actually called the No Fire Zone, and a Channel 4 documentary kind of highlights this if you want to learn about it in more detail. But essentially what they did was they got rid of anybody who could bear witness to what was happening, and then they systematically targeted those areas, which meant that so many Tamil lives were taken. But that's just one incident, and there's so many riots and pogroms that happened before that before the war in 2009. That's like the most known one, but even before that, for so many years, this has kind of been happening. And what the incident that I mentioned, the 2009 No Fire Zone incident, that was like one incident, but there's so many things that happened before that that haven't been spoken about. Things like the burning of the Jaffna Library, which contained Tamil literature that spanned like many thousands of years, that was just gotten rid of because that's how you erase a race, right? That's how you get rid of a history of culture. But what I want to say is, like, I feel like this kind of political knowledge, politics is not I'm still learning so much about it, so I don't know like accurate facts of this is exactly what happened, it's hearsay, but what I do know is the kind of very real effect that it has had on my family, so many other Tamils who have lost their family, and missing children, missing parents, so many. Those are the kind of very real life events that I know are true. Yeah, there's so much I could talk about.
I think it's really inspirational that you're using your knowledge and platform to talk about these issues. It's really important for people to just own refugee related issues and do something about it, and that's exactly what you're doing. So I think it's great.
Thank you.
So I know that you have a book in progress. Can you tell me a bit about that? Kind of what motivated you to start writing the book?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it started as me trying to understand my parents' history and their journey better, because I think growing up here, we don't really talk about it. Well, we do talk about it, but we also don't talk about it, and certainly not in as much depth as I would like to. So it started off as a kind of personal, me trying to just explore it and understand it a bit more. But in the process, what I realized was just how rich the experiences were, and just how much these stories really needed to be told. So I sort of progressed then from not just talking to my parents to talking to other people, other Tamils, other refugees. So at the moment, I'm in the process of interviewing refugees and just hearing their stories, because I feel like, you know, their stories really need to be shared, and I really need to do justice to it as well. So I'm taking it really slowly. I'm still in the interviewing stages, but yeah.
It'll come along, and
yeah, hopefully.
take your time with it. So I want to ask, do you believe that each individual has a role to play in making refugees feel welcome? And as a medical student, you may have a different view on the treatment of refugees from those in politics. So what would you say about that?
Yeah, two kind of questions in one, I guess. Firstly, absolutely, there's no question about it that we all have a role to play in making refugees feel welcome. It's not just refugees, it's making everybody feel welcome, actually. And I think the current, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement at the moment really highlights the need for that. I think there are certain groups of people, I suppose, that I'd really like to talk about, that I feel have an increased role in making them feel welcome. I would say employers, teachers, healthcare professionals are like the three main ones. Mm-hmm. I mention employers because, again, from like personal experiences, things that my parents have gone through, I think when refugees come over, I suppose they really don't have very much to go from in terms of resources, and they turn to work to try to put food on the table and put a roof over their head, right? But because they don't have papers, there are so many employers who will just exploit them and will make them work for like ridiculous hours for such like inhumane amounts of money. And I think that's so detrimental. It's like they've gone through all the suffering already to get to this country to just be alive, and yet we're making them go through even more. So I feel like employers I know it's difficult for employers too, but I think they have a role to play. Secondly, I mentioned teachers. I think teachers have a role to play, not just for children who are refugees, but also children of refugees. Because I suppose when children come from another country, the language barrier is a massive thing. And as a teacher, you are influencing that child. You influence how much self-esteem that they have, and how much freedom they feel, how free they feel to be able to express themselves. And unless in schools we create an environment where people do feel encouraged, to talk about their identity and to talk about the things that they go through, we're never going to be able to tackle this issue. I think, education is really where it starts. So I feel like teachers have a massive role to play. Particularly, just one more thing actually, particularly in not making students feel like they are somehow less or somehow incapable just because they can't speak the language. Because there's so many bright people who they just haven't been able to be exposed to like the English language. Therefore, it doesn't mean that they're not smart. It just means that that's just something that needs working on. And if teachers can help them in that area, they can really fly. So yeah, employers, teachers, and lastly, healthcare professionals. And I suppose this links on to the question about, as a medic, do I have a different point of view from perhaps like a politician? I think, again, when refugees come over, well, I suppose not just when they come over, but the kind of things that they go through mean that trusting authority is a real issue for them. So even though they are at an increased risk because of the trauma that they go through, even though they're at an increased risk of things like post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, and not to mention the kind of physical, very real complications of going through war and trauma, even though they are at an increased risk of these things, they are so afraid of reaching out to authorities, which means that when they do go and see a healthcare professional, they will be super vigilant, super careful of what they do say and what they don't say, just in case. What if the nurse goes and tells somebody that you've made this journey and that you're not supposed to be here, and what if you're sent back to your own country? So I think as healthcare professionals, we need to be more educated about this issue, about this kind of the social world in this way. And also we need to be, I think, honestly, we need to be less judgmental of people, and just so that they feel that they are able to trust us, and that we can really put their lives and their health and their lives first. Yeah,
definitely. I think that they're all really valid points. I mean, a bit of a difficult question.
Okay.
What can be done, to raise awareness? What do you think? What's your specific opinion on that?
Yeah, again, it's really tricky, because the people that go through the struggle, like my parents, they're very afraid of talking about it. And then when the children talk about it, or when other people talk about it, they're like, you need to be really careful, because you don't know what's going to happen to you, because that's a reality, because when they spoke out in their country, there were very real consequences for that. So I think tackling the fear is one thing, but I think those of us who do have a platform to talk about it really should embrace that. And I think it starts in schools. I think I mentioned that earlier as well, but I think the Black Lives Matter movement also highlights this massively. The fact that, in schools, we need to talk so much more about interracial relationships, and just the things that have happened in history that just cannot be repeated. History lessons at school, I feel at the moment, take a rather biased and very narrow perspective, but actually there's so much that's happened. I know we can't talk about everything and we can't teach everything, but I think having a broader curriculum will definitely help. Having safe spaces where we can talk about these things in schools can help. Because after all, it's the children who are going to grow up and become the citizens of the world, right? And I think also, just in terms of medical school, I think medical school can do more in terms of educating its students about looking out for refugees, and how to approach and support somebody if they do reveal that they've gone through this really difficult journey to you. Because I feel like these are things just aren't talked about, unless you go into psychiatry, and unless you go into that very specific route. As a general practitioner, I don't think they are really exposed to this kind of thing. And I say I don't think, I know, because from my own experiences, when I was diagnosed with depression, it was never a question of, have you gone through something? You're somebody of colour, perhaps you've gone through something, maybe you've travelled a journey or something. There was no knowledge about the fact that Tamils were refugees, and therefore it was until I saw a psychiatrist who was who was politically well aware of the fact that Tamils were refugees, that he could make the link between my parents being refugees and me going through some struggles as a result of that. But my GP could not make that link, because he wasn't very aware about these things. So I feel like, yeah, in terms of awareness, I think each of us could always do more in terms of learning, but also in schools and at university, I think we can do more to teach about this too.
Yeah, also I feel like the younger generation now is very lucky in terms of the access they have to the internet, and we can just find all kinds of information on there.
Yeah.
So I feel like the younger generation is definitely a lot more aware, and I hope that can be the reason why things start changing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think social media really has revolutionized the ability to share these kinds of things.
Yeah, and as individuals, we have to make the most of it. As I said previously, we have to own it and do everything we can to raise awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once again, very valid points, I think. Thank you so much for being on here. And before we end, Thivyaa is going to read a poem that she wrote herself for us. So the stage is yours whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this poem is called On Being Uprooted. I'll just read it. To live in kinship with other creatures is to live on a canvas of colour, where the rich tones of life create a harmony. Such was the land where my mother used to live, bursting with feathers of every shade, and leaves of every shape, and chirps of every octave, that it was hard not to feel awash with joy simply from opening one's eyes. But one day, those senses became alight not with pleasure, but with grief. For someone had set a conflagration, claiming that the land was their territory. And so it was that the leaves became singed, now soot covered where colour had sprung. In the enemy's eyes, the creatures, the birds, the goats, the trees, were all weeds to be snipped off and dug out and wiped without a trace. So what could my mother's community do but try to save their symbiotic friends? They went in search of any surviving seedlings, and saplings too, which had been buried alive. Fledgling lives, struggling, choking on smoke and gas. And though the enemy had bulldozed over the now barren land, they found a solitary sapling, its neighbours diseased and its fruits fallen. Whilst its roots screamed that it would rather die here with its dead family, here in its homeland, than be sent far away, what could they do but wrench it from its soil? They watered the withered sapling and wrapped it in a crate and whispered, "Don't worry, my child, a few miles away a safer life awaits," hoping in their heart that it was not with false hope that they had soothed its suffering. News came that some other saplings had been shipped into lorries, driven for several days, but the lack of sun and water and air had made them suffocate. Others had been stuffed together under the planks of a boat, but the sea had taken them under and stolen all their hopes. So this little sapling was placed instead in the boot of a car, so near the exhaust fumes that it nearly wilted en route. Parched and without sunlight, the sapling struggled to breathe. It had not been warned of the added grief of travelling solitary. After several hours of not knowing night from day, with the passage of time being marked by the growing pain of hunger and thirst and tiredness, not to mention loneliness, the sapling was dropped off in the middle of nowhere. They had crossed a fence, the driver said, and this was as far as they could go. But unplanted, unwatered, the sapling was vulnerable to being trampled on. It hoped and prayed. How much more pain could it endure? Would it die now, after this wretched journey, or would there be a different end in place? For some years, it passed the treacherous hands of those who stole its fruit, kept it in the dark and watered it just enough to stop it from wilting. It was trapped in the confines of a plot, stuffed alongside others who had come from afar, all exploited, labelled here too in this foreign land as weeds, second-class organisms undeserving of life. What is this, the saplings thought? We had hoped to find a safer place to live, not to encroach upon another, but to simply find a different patch of the earth where we could breathe. Instead, we are back in that conflagration. This time, what is singed is our hope, and what is chipped is the wings of our seeds, now struggling to grow in a place where they are made to feel that they do not belong. What was the point in making that journey, if here too we are told to be gone? It is not easy being uprooted, nor to leave one's friends and family. And even when one is lucky enough to have been replanted with the kindness of strangers, survivor's guilt can stump one's growth, not to mention the trauma of the journey, nor the disorientation of living in a new culture, nor the challenge of communicating in a new language, and above all, the strangled sense of identity. It seems that until the threat to life touches home, many will turn a blind eye to its reality, like the current pandemic, I guess. Perhaps now, we will try a little more to understand one another's pain, to offer a kinder hand, and be less judgmental of those who ask for help. Just think, if you were this sapling, and life turned upside down for you, if your country was ablaze and your life was threatened, what would it be that you would do?
Thank you so much, Thivyaa. That was beautiful. I think your words will resonate with many people who have gone through the same struggle. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks to Thivyaa for her inspiring talk. We now have a performance from the citizens of the World Choir waiting for you. Enjoy! Come to the end of our session of today. Thank you all for coming and watching us. A special thanks to Becky, Thivyaa and the citizens of the World Choir for their participation. Stay tuned for tomorrow's session at the same time. See you!